Welcome to Headline to Heartline. Some palace doors open to noise, while the heaviest truths stay behind them.
There are mounting calls for the former Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, to give evidence about what she knows about Jeffrey Epstein.
Tonight, I want to begin with a question I cannot shake. If accountability is truly the goal in the Epstein story, why does it feel as though Sarah Ferguson is being pushed to the front before some of the most powerful American names ever linked to that world? The BBC report and the BBC News YouTube video both drive the same striking headline: "Pressure is mounting on Sarah Ferguson to give evidence about Jeffrey Epstein." And let me say this plainly from the start. I do not defend Sarah Ferguson, not morally, not socially, and certainly not when it comes to her connection to Epstein. Now, I also want to be fair. Accountability matters. If Sarah Ferguson knows something meaningful, then yes, her speaking could matter. Yes, her testimony could have value. Yes, she may deserve to be questioned. But before she becomes the face of this latest push, I think many people are already asking a harder question. What about Bill Clinton? What about Donald Trump? What about the many American elite names that may tell us far more about the structure of power, influence, and protection around Epstein? That is why this story hits such a nerve for me, because the issue is not whether Sarah Ferguson deserves scrutiny. In my view, she absolutely does. The issue is whether the spotlight is being aimed in the right order and for the right reasons. The reporting around her is deeply ugly. Public reports have long tied her to financial distress and to Epstein stepping into that picture in ways that make the whole relationship look compromising, transactional, and morally rotten. There are also reports of warm, familiar messages that become even more disturbing once you remember exactly who Epstein was and what was already known about him. And for me, one of the darkest parts of this is that when her daughters were younger, she was still the Duchess of York, still carrying that royal standing, still moving within that world of status and access, and yet she allowed this convicted sex offender anywhere near the edges of her family life. That makes it worse, not better. It turns bad judgment into something even uglier because it brought royal legitimacy and maternal responsibility uncomfortably close to a man who should have been kept far away. So no, this is not a defense of Sarah Ferguson. I think her conduct shows terrible judgment. I think it reflects a pattern of scandal, carelessness, and compromised instincts that has already damaged trust in the British monarchy, especially after the disgrace surrounding Prince Andrew. And I think people are right to ask how this relationship was ever tolerated at all. But here is where I part company with the framing, because when I watch the BBC package and hear a congressman and Gloria Allred, the lawyer for Epstein's victims, urging Sarah Ferguson to come forward and testify, I hear two things at once. First, I hear a valid call for accountability. If she knows something, she should speak. But second, I hear the pull of a royal headline. I hear a familiar media instinct to move the camera toward the loudest, most theatrical figure in the room. And I cannot help wondering whether Sarah Ferguson is being treated as a truly central figure in understanding Epstein's network, or simply as the most watchable one because her story touches the British monarchy. The BBC is careful on one crucial point. It says there is currently no legal mechanism to compel Sarah Ferguson to testify in the United States. That matters. She is not being presented as someone charged with a crime. She is not being presented as a formal target. What is happening is public pressure and legal advocacy, not a legal command. She is being framed as a potential witness, someone who may know things, someone who should speak if she has relevant information. That is serious, but it is not the same thing as saying she sits at the center of the case. And that is exactly where I think we need to slow down. Because if the real goal is to understand what Epstein's network actually was, who sustained it, who benefited from it, who looked away, and how powerful people continued moving around him, then the conversation cannot become too comfortable with the royal angle. Sarah Ferguson may be part of the story. She may even be a useful witness, but the larger architecture of this scandal does not begin with her, and it does not end with her. Before we go further, if you value thoughtful commentary that goes beyond the obvious headline, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. And now, let's continue. To be fair, I am not saying American elites have faced no scrutiny at all. That would be too simple. Some major names have been questioned, some have issued firm denials, and some have acknowledged social contact while rejecting any deeper implication. But I am saying that the public still does not have a clear, proportionate, satisfying picture of how the most powerful American figures connected to Epstein's orbit fit into the broader truth. That unresolved feeling remains, and in that vacuum, a royal scandal becomes very easy to elevate. That is why this moment is so revealing. Sarah Ferguson is not irrelevant, she is not harmless, and she certainly does not deserve sympathy from me. But she is also, in my view, noisier than she is central. Her connection to the monarchy makes her irresistible to the media. Her history makes her easy to condemn. Her link to Andrew makes her part of a wider royal stain that people already understand. All of that is true, but none of that automatically makes her the clearest path to understanding what was really going on in Epstein's world. And I think that distinction is what can get lost when a report becomes too captivated by its most dramatic character. Because once a royal name enters the frame, the whole story changes temperature. The coverage becomes cleaner, sharper, easier to package. The public gets a familiar scandal, but the hardest questions are often still sitting elsewhere, among money, politics, influence, and protection. So my position is firm but fair. Yes, accountability matters. Yes, Sarah Ferguson speaking could matter too. If she knows something substantive, she should say it. If she can clarify part of the truth, she should not hide behind silence, distance, or old titles. But before the public is encouraged to see her as some defining piece of this puzzle, I think it is entirely reasonable to ask why the same intensity doesn't seem to land, in the public imagination at least, on the American political and elite names that may clarify even more about how this network really functioned. That is the tension at the heart of this story. I do not think Sarah Ferguson's connection to Epstein can be brushed aside as a social mistake. I think it reflects something morally appalling. I think the fact that this touched a royal family and touched it while she still carried the dignity and visibility of a duchess makes the whole thing more offensive. But I also don't think placing her too close to the center of this narrative gives us the clearest path to truth. It risks shrinking a sprawling power story into a more familiar royal scandal, and that may satisfy the appetite for headlines without satisfying the need for answers. So yes, ask Sarah Ferguson hard questions, absolutely. Hold her accountable for appalling judgment, absolutely. But do not stop there, and do not pretend that putting her at the center automatically brings us closer to the full truth. Because if accountability is the real goal, then the line of questioning has to be wider, deeper, and braver than one royal headline. I would love to know what you think. Do you believe Sarah Ferguson is an important witness in the search for accountability, or do you think the greater urgency still lies with American leaders and elite figures who may clarify more about the network itself? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please subscribe to the channel and like this video before you go, and I will see you next time. Some palace doors may open the story, but truth still waits deeper inside.